This is Don't Get Me Started. This is a conversation about advertising. And here is your host, freelance creative director and creative circus department head, Dan Balser.
Yes, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. If you're paying attention to this podcast recently, this is I think we may be having issues with my recorder. We didn't get too far, but we weren't recording anything. So this is take two, and I'm sure Patrick is thinking like, well, why would you tell him it's take two? We could have just fooled everybody. You know why? Because I overshare. I overshared. If you haven't figured that out in all the years you've been listening to this conversation, then you haven't actually been listening. So today, Patrick Holly is here, and I think this is going to be interesting. I think that this is a very interesting route, a rapid trajectory for a young guy now working at a huge brand that chances are you've never heard of. But let's get really quickly, I'm going to do this for the second time. You didn't hear me the first time. We're going to run through the Patrick's background before we start getting into it. So Patrick is from suburban Boston. And
the boring part
of Boston, the non-accent part. Went to University of Massachusetts, and then he worked in Portland. I'm wondering how the heck you got from Massachusetts all the way out to the west coast of Portland. The Portland Ad Federation had a thing called the PAF Collaboratory that Patrick was selected to be a writer and do, like, is it like an internship or is it like a program? Pretty cool. Kind of started you down. That was the first push down the hill, right, to start things rolling. Was it an agency called Possible out in Seattle for not a long time before making his move to San Francisco, where you were at RGA San Francisco, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because we were talking about Nick Law. Nick was always in New York, though, right? Wasn't he always in New York? Mm-hmm. Okay, so RGA for almost 2 years, then made a move to Apple, was a creative at Apple working on the launch of Apple Music. Apple Music is like Apple's version of Spotify.
Exactly.
If you didn't know that. Then a senior creative at AKQA, great shop. You get a sense, listeners, if you're paying attention to advertising, that there's a digital slant to this work. We're not going to see a lot. You're not going to look at Patrick Holly's website and see a whole lot of magazine ads. All right, he's shaking his head. Then, like I said earlier, I know I said this already to you. A lot of the stuff we're saying, we've already heard. This may be the first episode that my son listens to because you spent over 2 years working for the man and the brand of Steph Curry, launching Steph's brand in China. So cool.
Yeah.
So interesting. Yeah. Before making a move to Uber, where you were associate creative director for a little over a year, and now currently at OYO in San Francisco. And
in Dallas now.
Yes, Dallas.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
I'm doing the very fun commute between San Francisco and Dallas right now.
Is there any OYO in San Francisco?
Yes, so the global headquarters is in Palo Alto, but the U.S. headquarters is in Dallas.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Gotcha. So welcome to school, welcome to the microphone, and welcome to the intro for the second time.
Yeah. Well, something that I didn't mention to you before is that I actually I've been listening to your podcast for over 10 years now. When I was, and I know I told you earlier when I was at Possible, I wasn't even the bottom rung on the totem pole. Mm-hmm. I was the dirt underneath it. So
what were you doing there?
I was an intern. I was just learning what a copywriter was, honestly. I was just doing as many headlines for Microsoft hardware as you could possibly imagine.
So when you say a lot of headlines, you just mean like, here's the thing we need you to write a headline to,
mm-hmm.
write a whole bunch of them to this thing,
mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, it was mice.
Yep. Actual, like this thing.
Yep, like a mouse.
A mouse, yeah.
Yep. And while I was walking in the rain from my shitty apartment to my shitty job at a fantastic company, I listened to your podcast. And I've been listening literally ever since.
Yeah, that's crazy.
I would look for, as someone who didn't go to ad school, I went a kind of untraditional route to get into advertising. But as someone who didn't have the kind of primer that you get at ad school about like what the industry is like, what the career trajectory to kind of climb the rungs in creativity looks like, I really found kind of solace in listening to your podcast and, looking at the guys who had quote unquote made it, who are CDs at Wyden or, heads of brand at places and, seeing what their trajectory was like and in a certain way molding my own trajectory after that.
And 99% of those people sitting this close at a table are like just fucking guys, just
Yeah.
and women who are like, they're fallible, they're anxious, they're worried about being found out as frauds. They're
imposter syndrome runs deep in our industry.
They're all 99% of them just so damn cool. And so but this goes back to what I think you were saying, which I think is so profound, and people say it often, but it should be underscored repeatedly. Dan Wyden's credo: be the dumb, show up dumb every day. Just come into the room like, no, not necessarily, but I would say no expectations of anything, just open-minded and willing to sort of just hang out and talk and be honest. And my hope has always been that people can listen to this conversation and either see themselves in you or see the things in you, not necessarily that are obvious, like I'm creative or I'm curious or I'm talented, but that like I'm willing to work hard, or that I may not feel successful. Like
That's true.
That's a question that you know what? I'm going to go to that one because I've often asked that question and stopped for a while. Do you feel at this point successful, and how do you define success? In the point that, like, are you going for some sort of success? Do you feel like you've achieved some success? Like, how do you define that? Because I got to believe anyone looking at your website is going to be like, yeah, this guy, this is success for sure. But do you feel successful? And
Yeah, I it's kind of a hard question because the bar keeps getting moved every time you go to a new job.
Great point. Yeah.
And every single time you go there, and every single time in my career that I've kind of started a new project, I've felt like the imposter. I've felt unqualified, or that I'd be, like you were saying, found out. And I think after being in this industry for about a decade now, that's just the normal.
Right.
And that's something that, once you can accept that no one knows what they're talking about, and if they do, they're a liar, then the sooner you're going to be able to be a successful creative and actually be happy. And I think success is in accepting your fallibility as a creative and as a human and as a kind of a part of this larger industry that we call creativity.
Wow, that's really good. No, I think you can know stuff in your craft, but the minute that you feel like you know it is when you stop innovating and you stop being relevant.
Yeah, that's when you get fired.
Yeah, right. So I wrote a question down while you were presenting. So one of the things you talked about in the forum, which I mentioned a little bit at the intro, was Steph Curry and going to China. And there's an app in China that's like it's like WhatsApp, but it's called WeChat. You mentioned it.
It was created as a literal photocopy of WhatsApp.
Right, a knockoff. It's so Chinese.
Yeah, well, and now,
no offense, China,
but now because the way that the media landscape works out there, if you're successful, you end up kind of being the app that does everything. So it started as a messaging app, but now it's its own ecosystem. You can pay your water bill, you can order a taxi, you can message your friends.
It's possible now. It's like PlayStation was always supposed to be that. Consoles were going to be that. When PlayStation came out in '99, the internet couldn't handle it. And now you're able to do, like, you run your house through your gaming console.
Yeah.
So my question, though, is, this is kind of getting in the weeds a little bit about how you do the job, but, like, how do you figure out the technical part of, like, creating a brand and using that software as Steph Curry's platform with content? How did you literally technically figure out, how do you find the partnerships to figure out what the technical specs were? I mean, you had said this, you said it's like navigating in the dark through a field of vipers or snakes or whatever. So how do you figure out I have no doubt, and you said this too, creators come up with award-winning ideas. We have the thing we're going to make. How the hell?
Got a million of them.
How do you get there? How did you get there on this one? I'm just curious.
So I'll say there's a couple ways. The first one is by surrounding myself with people who know a lot more than I do, which isn't hard, but especially when it comes to foreign technical expertise.
So you guys had that.
We did, yeah. So we had some incredibly intelligent people who actually have had experience in WhatsApp. Like before in WeChat. Like I was saying before, like WeChat has become this Uber app for lack of a better term, and not Uber in terms of like the company I just worked for,
Super mega ultra app.
Exactly, where you can do anything on it, including start your own content platform with Steph Curry. So we just found people who had done other things on the platform before, utilized their expertise, and filled in the blanks where we found
Did you
them.
mess around with that platform?
Yeah, of course.
Personally?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course. Yes. And that's the only way that you're going to be able to, potentially find ways to innovate is by, bringing in experts who do this all the time and then coming in completely green and using your stupidity, your lack of expertise and experience as a benefit to you and as a way to see things that people may not see.
That's what I was talking about, and that was the nature of the question I asked in the forum. Like, isn't it kind of helpful to be slightly naive to say like, well, can we do this? Because if you're super familiar with the platform, then you're only thinking about the things you've already seen in there. Unless you're really good and you can say, wait a minute, let's crack it open this way and look at it from that other angle. But how did you have, this is just me wondering, like, what did the team, I guess part of this is me saying, okay, this is a dude who's an athlete. What's the infrastructure around the creative team around that? Like, who are your co-workers and partners in that situation? Because I think we're kind of familiar with how an agency structure works. But how did that creative structure work?
So it wasn't more akin to an agency model as it would be to a product model, a tech product model. So the fact that we were working with Steph Curry made relatively no difference to the team that we were building. We could have been creating a platform for, fill in the blank, a brand, but the team really was, started with the tech. We can make all the content we want, but if we can't get people to see it, then it's absolutely useless. So we had to have people who are experts come in and really kind of, honestly code us and school us as creatives on what was possible on the platform. And then we had to do our own homework to see, beyond that, what was possible. And it was kind of great because ultimately we created something that had never been created before.
That's cool.
By making this celebrity-led content platform for a Western celebrity on a platform that served the world's largest basketball market of like 300 million people.
300 million people play basketball in China.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
That's like literally every single person in America.
Yeah,
like every grandmother, every neighbor plays basketball. That's insane.
Yeah, there's more basketball fans there than people in the U.S. Yeah, obviously why Steph was pretty excited to go there. Cool.
So do you sign up for everything, every app, and social? Yeah. All of them, right?
Hard stop, yes.
Yeah. I think that's one thing that I used to do really well. And people would say, well, why are you using that? I'm like, I don't know yet. I'll let you know. It'll either reveal itself or it'll go away. I mean, I was on Foursquare and I was using Foursquare.
Hell yeah. I was the mayor of RGA San Francisco on Foursquare.
I was the mayor of Hearth Pizza Tavern in my neighborhood. And the waitress says to us, as the server says to us one night, so have you ever been to Hearth before? I'm like, well, I'm the mayor. And I said, okay, so I guess Foursquare is not relevant anymore. Nobody knows but me. But you know what?
It's a little victories, right?
The answer is, I don't know yet. I'll get back to you. I mean, you have to do all of them. And like, especially if you're a steward for a brand in digital and social media. I mean, you said you've been on TikTok for 6 months. By the time this comes out, it's been 7 or 8 months. And you said it. You also nailed this one too. To me, it was always people lip syncing videos, but it's not. It's more, obviously.
And what's more is that I surround myself with people on my team and just in my friend group that have that same kind of curiosity and bring things to my attention that I had never even thought of. There's a guy on my team who's also a dear friend of mine named Nick Scarlett, who worked with me at Uber and just recently started at OYO. Who is he's not even on Instagram, but he is like the world's biggest TikTok fan.
Yeah, I think we have some of those here in school, honestly.
Yeah, and he becomes invaluable to the brand because honestly, once a platform is matured and those paywalls go up, you as a brand have to pay to play. Yeah, you don't get to experiment anymore without a budget. And so as as a brand who does have budget, whatever size that may be, if you can go into this Wild West phase of these platforms and really cultivate an audience who likes you for you, you're going to be able to set the tone for that platform going forward, for brands on that platform going forward. And it just takes, striking out on a bunch of them
Right.
To get that one home run.
Not a huge investment to strike out.
Absolutely not.
Right.
It's just time.
Yeah. So do you, when you're creating, are you thinking, do you have that user in your mind all the time? Are you thinking about people looking at it? Is it a different user? So I drew this little chart. This is the dumbest chart ever. But like this is time, right? I'm going to have to take a picture of this. So Facebook was the thing. Facebook overlapped with Instagram. Mm-hmm. My kids aren't on Facebook. They won't do Facebook, but they're doing Instagram. And now I think this TikTok is here where you might have a little bit of overlap. It may kind of take over. Mm-hmm. And you see the generations, my generation and Gen X's live on Facebook. Millennials are on Instagram, and then you got Gen Zs on TikTok, right?
And YouTube kind of honestly spans the entire.
No, I think YouTube is all here because YouTube to me is a utility in a way. YouTube to me is sort of the internet, right? It's the base. It's Google. Yeah. So like I'm opening everybody's using YouTube because it feels to me like it has the least of these what we're talking about. It has the least of a sort of a brand identity thing. It's just a conveyor belt to me.
It's a blank slate.
Right.
I mean, it started out, it was their original tagline was your video repository, I think, which is the least sexy thing ever.
Right. I fell asleep for a split second.
Right.
Yeah.
Which is kind of core to their current business offering as well, or their current brand offering as well, is that they don't necessarily have a brand other than the creators who are on their platform.
I'm trying to say that. Yeah.
Yeah.
You said that. You said it better than way better. So my question for you is like making these moves as a creator. Are you cognizant of individual's sort of mindset, the psychology of the culture of the generation? Is that something that you're aware of and thinking about? Is that something that's talked about? Because I talk about it a lot here in class, but do you talk about that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I think
does that question even make sense?
No, it totally makes sense. And it's something I think about all the time because, ultimately, in order to be a creative who lasts a long time and is relevant for their entire career within the industry, you need to have empathy. You need to be able to be, and I said this in my form, you need to be vulnerable. Like, be smart, no, you're dumb. Like, you're not, you don't know the audience. The only time that you know the audience is like, and I'm terrified of this right now because at this point, like, as a millennial, I'm what brands are looking to sell to. I'm who they're looking to sell to. And so it makes my job relatively easier. But then when, the TikTok generation becomes, employed and is able to buy stuff, I'm old news. I'm fucked if I don't stay up with the stuff that's happening.
That's on the nose.
Yeah. And I mean, it's true though. And if you don't have that kind of, that creative curiosity and that ability to put yourself in another kind of person's shoes in every sense of the word, you're not going to make it in this industry for longer than the time at which you are the relevant audience.
Right. I think it's important to emphasize what you said in the middle of that, which is like brands want to sell to your generation, which makes your job relatively easier. It makes your job relatively easier because you don't have to work for empathy. It's just who you are.
Exactly.
And I think that's really important to understand that we rarely will have the opportunity. We will 100% not have the opportunity to do that for our whole career. Mm-hmm. And not always will we have the opportunity to work on brands that are selling to ourselves. So that's really important. So I asked this recently on another episode, and I think it's an important question, frankly, just for me. I'm the only one that wants to answer. I don't even know if the listeners are going to care about it. But what is advertising now? I mean, you look at some of the stuff that you've done in your book, and even to me, I would think sort of universally loved piece is the piece for Uber for Meals on Wheels. Mm-hmm. And if the listeners haven't seen it, go check it out. It raised $1 million for Meals on Wheels by doing custom plates for specific people in communities. And it's heartwarming. It's also money making, and it's really well presented, really well executed. Kudos.
Thank you very much.
The hell is that? It's not an ad. So what is advertising? What is advertising? What's the genesis of that? What's the kickoff on that project look like? Mm-hmm. And how should we be thinking about making portfolios and what we're going to be doing when we get out of here?
Mm-hmm. So advertising, I think, is almost a misnomer in and of itself. That when you think about the state of advertising right now, it has nothing to do with advertising. It has to do with us understanding where people are spending their time right now and how we can seamlessly integrate within it. Some of the books that I saw today, the best work that I saw were ones that utilized, cultural phenomena or platforms or things that people already do, and then found a clever way to insert the brand in there in a way that didn't feel like appropriation, didn't feel like, like advertising. Mm-hmm. And I think, it goes back to what we were just talking about before, is you need to be creatively curious. You need to be able to go deep on these platforms, be a user yourself. And that is what's going to allow you to properly market on it.
Yes, very much.
Yeah, I do think that the state of advertising right now is just, it's content, and that's not an original answer. It's not something that's groundbreaking, but it's the ability to create like objects within these spaces. So if you're on TikTok, you need to be able to make great TikToks. You don't take your fucking ad and cut it down to 15 seconds or 5 seconds or whatever, put it on TikTok and think that is your TikTok content.
Right.
It's not. Mm-mm. Same thing when you do a story, an Instagram story, branded Instagram story. You don't take your beautiful 30-second spot that was shot in 9:16, I don't know.
16:9.
There we go. And then try to make it work in 9:16. It's just, it looks janky. It looks lazy.
It looks like I have to turn my head.
Yeah.
So I had this conversation in class recently, and this is an intro to teams class, second quarter, very early on, and they were doing ads I should say ads. They were doing an assignment for they chose Insomnia Cookies. It's a place that delivers cookies late night to like 3 a.m. Fresh baked.
I'm super glad it's not near me in San Francisco.
Dude, you'd balloon up. And I told them, and they killed it. They nailed it. I said, these should have to be social, mm-hmm. and your phone knows what time it is. Mm-hmm. Your phone knows where you are. Mm-hmm. The phone knows what you're doing. So you're scrolling. They came up with a whole campaign that leveraged the way people use social media late at night, whether they've been drinking or not drinking, they're exhausted or not exhausted, and the basic mindset of someone in that state of mind. And I think that it's one of the strongest pieces of work I've seen from students, and it was one of the best campaigns I've seen for a second quarter class for sure. And it doesn't have to be so hard, right? This doesn't have to be difficult, but it doesn't start anymore from what the brand's saying. It starts from, right? Does it start from?
It doesn't. It starts from what does it? It starts from what people already want. It starts from what people are already doing. Mm-hmm. And I think, like I was saying before about making like objects, like you need to make sure that your message is not jarring to the audience that is consuming a million other messages on that platform every single day.
Right. It's not friends partying. Hey, wait a minute. Let's talk to you about a brand new offer.
Yeah. You're like, fuck off.
Right.
I don't want it.
Fucking brand new offer.
Yeah. Like, and it's the same thing why when, whenever we at OYO are doing stories, like promoted stories, we don't design it in Photoshop and then drop it in. We use the native functionality within Instagram.
Nice.
Because that's the only way that you're going to be able to more or less Trojan horse your message in. And it's not even like a sneaky
No, thank you.
thing.
I was about to say that. It's not a shitty thing.
It's not a shitty thing to do.
You're adding value to people's experience. That's good content is something I want. And those ads that they did are funny. They're good.
Yeah.
And because I used to say this when I first saw Facebook ads for the first time. I'm like, I don't really like having somebody show up at my party with business cards. Mm-hmm. But if somebody shows up at a party and they're funny, I'll talk to them.
Right. If they show up at your potluck with cookies and they're a cookie company, great. You're the right guest I want.
There you go.
So it's just a matter of,
well said.
Of going to the right party with the right party favor, for lack of a better saying.
Let's stick with the metaphor. All right. So related question, I think. We haven't really talked enough about you. We're going to get to you in a minute.
Oh, God.
That's one of the three reactions that gets. So back, I guess we can use it as an example, the Meals on Wheels or something else. But what are the problems? What are the problems that brands are solving now that advertising or our jobs are to solve? What are the problems that they're solving? Are they the same they've always been? Is it always about awareness or perception, or are there different kinds of problems?
Not necessarily.
Okay.
I think that when you start working for a brand, like the brands that I've worked for, brands that have been like Apple and Uber, if you haven't heard of Apple or Uber, you're not going to see the ad I'm going to make. It's just a fact.
That's not their problem. Yeah.
And so for these brands, it's not a matter of letting you know who they are. It's letting you know what they stand for, more or less. And when I came on to Uber, one of my main charges from the strategy team was, and not mine, but like the whole creative team's charges was to do things that, made Uber look good, honestly. And what looks better than, using a product that's native to us, which is mobility, to help people who need it. And so the way that the brief came in was more or less, we have a partnership with Meals on Wheels. What do we do? Like,
Great.
okay, like that's great.
It's great. That's a great little narrow box to play in.
Yeah, and it's narrow in one sense, but it's also broad in the other. Where it's like, okay, what do we do? Oh shit. Okay, let's figure it out. So the way we kind of broke it down was, what is true for our brand that's also true for Meals on Wheels. And what we found is that it's all about connection. It's about connecting people.
That's really interesting.
And Uber brings you from A to B, and Meals on Wheels, brings not only meals but companionship to seniors around the country. It's millions of people every single day.
What you just said, was that in the brief, or was that something that you guys
observed? That's something that we observed.
The part about connecting people.
Yeah, that was part of the reaction to the brief. Mm-hmm. And ultimately, by finding that commonality, we were able to create something that felt true to our brand, but also felt true to their brand. So the kind of problem that we have was multifold. We had to, one, let people know that we had this partnership, which is kind of like cost of entry. Uber is partnering. We want to tell people about it. That's fine. Whatever we make is going to do that. The next one was that we wanted to, we found out this stat. So my friend Nick is, so it's funny. I've got two friends named Nick that are involved with this project.
They're different guys.
Different guys.
What are the odds?
One is Nick Scarlett, the one who currently works with me at OYO. He was my partner on this at Uber. The other one is my friend Nick Brycewitz. So his job is head of fundraising. I think it might still be, but when I talked to him about this, his job was head of fundraising for this charity. And he told me a fact that it was something like charities raise 50% of all their funds in the last couple weeks of the year. It's basically people who are trying to lower their tax burden at the end of the year.
100%, yeah.
And so...
By the way, listeners who are young, that means if you give to charity to a 501c, you get to deduct charitable contributions to lower your gross income.
Yeah. And so...
Taxable income.
A lot of these charities, it's a mad dash at the end of the year, and it's honestly very stressful, and it's not the right way to go about things. So... at least from a business perspective, if you ran a business and all of your profit came in just a couple weeks,
that's retail.
I mean, fair point. It's also chaotic in retail
not
as
good.
well.
No, they don't like it either.
So anyway, going back to it, we found out this fact, and so what we wanted to do more so than just give people free rides to go visit with seniors, we wanted to give Meals on Wheels a way to fundraise all year round.
That's really cool.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
So how could we, do that in a way that we didn't have a ton of budget for this because it was a charity.
It's a side thing.
It's a side thing,
yeah.
Which honestly are always the best things.
For sure.
But we didn't have a lot of money to do this, so we wanted to try to figure out a way to, create a sustainable kind of income stream for this charity, but also, let people know that it was happening and allow them to participate and ultimately, bring in donations and stuff like that. So basically the way that it worked is we partnered with artists who had a large following on Instagram. Built-in media buy right there. You commission them, you have them do a couple posts, and...
built-in media get.
Exactly. So what we wanted to do was to create a product that celebrated, the benefit of Meals on Wheels, which is these people who, don't have a whole lot of visitors, but have a ton of stories. Don't have anyone who will come and spend time with them, honestly. And
older people have really cool stories.
Yeah. And so we found basically three of the most interesting people you've ever met.
Crazy.
To be paired with these three amazing artists. to create. Each of them created a set of plates. Each of the artists created a set of plates that was based on the stories they shared over a meal with these seniors. And then they created these plates. We then created a platform online to buy these plates.
Yeah.
And ironically, so Uber is a technology company, right? We don't sell anything, or they don't sell anything, except plates.
That's so funny.
The first thing that Uber ever sold was plates.
That is so crazy.
And so what we ended up doing was setting up an e-com store in partnership with Meals on Wheels, and then ended up having the artists market to their followings, which is obviously, if you follow this person, you're probably going to buy one of their we saw.
Sure. Yeah.
And long story short, we ended up raising over $1 million for
so great
for Meals on Wheels seniors to continue getting this companionship and the food that they need.
And it enabled it to go to like a much more regular food delivery too, right?
Yeah, and I mean, ultimately,
versus like weekly, it went to almost daily.
Well, a lot of them are daily. We are basically allowing for that to be a more a diverse group of people, a more engaged group of people who are actually delivering those meals. So hopefully by kind of spreading that message.
Right, here's the risk of kissing your butt on this one, but like I watched that and I had no idea that the brief was that we're already paired with them. I thought the whole thing was so, I hate the word, it's just a lazy language. It just felt organic that this would have been together. Like it just felt really clean and right. And I asked the question about what problems brands are solving, because I think that they're always moving, and it's also especially when you're working in-house, there's just a whole different list of sort of tactical things to attack, right? It's not always telling people what we are. Sometimes it's these little small things. And why is it that you think the little side stuff is often the best stuff?
Because fewer people have their eyes on it
internally. There you go. And that's the answer.
Yeah.
Okay, let's move on.
There's fewer people who are going to come fuck your idea up.
So here's the thing, people. This is not, okay, so I've known Patrick now for a good hour. That was not a cynical reaction. That was not a cynical, jaded, the world is out to get us. The basic reality is that people that walk into a room and look at work are going to have an opinion on it. They're going to have an opinion. They're going to want their thumbprint on it, or they're not going to like some component of it, or they're going to second guess everything.
Yeah.
So your friends in the industry are the ones when there's less people looking at work and when there's a shorter deadline.
Yes.
Because there's just not enough time for people to change it. And very often, and we've all had this, I'm sure you've had this too, your purest, cleanest piece of creative comes very early, and oftentimes the rest of the process is just guarding, protecting, and advocating for that idea.
And honestly, like that's kind of what I said also in the forum, is that part of your career is the practice of creativity, and the other is the process of creativity.
Yeah,
it's a matter of
much more to the latter.
Yeah, I mean, there's parts of your career that are focused on making shit, and many more that are focused on learning how to get shit made.
Yeah,
and like you were talking about at the top of the show, like every creative has made award-winning work. It's only very few of them that have gotten that work sold and then actually get to win those awards.
I've said that a number of times. Careers aren't made on the ideas that you have; they're made on the ideas that you sell.
Yeah.
So, switching gears completely to your journey thus far, these are interesting and not insignificant moves. RGA to Apple, Apple to AKQA, AKQA to Steph Curry to Uber to OYO. How are you hearing about opportunities? Where do the moves come from? Are you recruited out? Are you looking at certain points to give yourself variety, working off the portfolio? Talk a little bit. Is there anything consistent that's precipitated in these moves, or talk a little bit about how you decide to take turns in your career?
So the only requirement that I have when assessing a potential opportunity, not the only, there's actually a couple of requirements.
But you said it, so the primary one.
The primary one is willingness of whether it's your boss or the brand or whatever, willingness to take risks, willingness to...
what is a risk?
A risk? Okay, so this is something I believe at my absolute core is that brands don't stand out by playing it safe. There's literally no way for someone to hear about what you're doing or care about what you're doing if it looks like everything else that everyone else is doing. And the term best practices is the dirtiest word in my opinion. Fuck best practices.
Yeah.
And when you come across an opportunity where the person whether it's the person who signs your checks or the person who gives you your briefs or the person who approves your work is willing to take those risks, go for it.
So you felt that was possible at these places.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're pretty these are not risk averse places. So how did you, okay, let's just go back then. You're at RGA, you're there for almost 2 years. Things are going pretty well at RGA. You're learning about doing digital stuff, you're kicking butt. How does Apple contact you? Do you hear about it from a recruiter? How does that move happen, and why?
So back in the day when I had a Tumblr, I made a friend on that Tumblr. His name was Keir Smith. He's fantastic, and he works at Apple, honestly. And he's not in the creative org or anything like that. He's a QA guy, and he and I were having a beer. And I was brand new in San Francisco, relatively. He was one of my only friends, and he was telling me like, "Hey, man, like I really think you'd succeed here." And I'm like, "How the fuck do you know? You don't work in the creative department."
Right.
But he was right. And so what he did is he just took my sad excuse for a book and put it in front of the
And you went because it's Apple?
the recruiter. Fuck yeah.
Yeah. No, that's a fair point. I mean, I'm not being facetious.
Yeah,
at all.
no. I mean, he put it in front of a recruiter who obviously had a million other books in front of him, and months later I got an exploratory call, and kind of the rest was history. Like I kind of let them know that it's not necessarily a move I was looking to make. It was 2 hours commute each way, but
Lord.
it was an opportunity I was open to, and I think that is the reason why I was brought on there, because I feel like everyone who goes there is like, I've made it.
Right.
Apple is the shit.
Yeah.
And trust me, I believe that too. Like I have an iPhone. I've always had an iPhone. I have I'm a fanboy to a certain extent, but to another extent, or even greater extent, I feel in order to be a good creative, you can't be drinking too much of the Kool-Aid. And I think that was one of the main reasons why I was hired on there.
Interesting. That's really interesting. So what did you learn? What did the experience of Apple teach you as a developing creative?
So
What'd you learn?
at this time, I'm only like a couple years.
What you learned about you and your process? What did you learn?
Yeah. So, I mean, at that point, I thought that everything I made, the first or second thing I did was the right thing, and that everyone else was stupid and that they just didn't get me.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
Dude, that was me at my first job 100% of the time.
Yeah. And that's every creative. We're assholes.
No, I don't think that's every creative.
Really?
You and I are like
then
that.
We're assholes.
Absolutely, 100%. No, I'm telling you, honestly, that was my experience, and it's not a universal experience.
Really? Okay,
Yes.
good, because it's a terrible experience.
It's terrible.
But
I hope only my partner knew I felt that way.
Yeah.
Because I hope I didn't exude that, but that was definitely how I felt. So go ahead.
yeah, and I I thought that everything I did, like the first or second thing, was the right one, and everything beyond that was just reductive. And
Reductive, interesting, like completely useless. Nothing.
well, it would just tear away from the idea. It would dilute it.
Yeah.
And honestly, I couldn't have been more wrong.
Yep.
Going to Apple, they really kind of take that 10,000 hours to mastery thing seriously. And if you thought writing 20 options for a headline was hard, try writing 200 and then throwing them all out and writing another 200. And
I'm surprised you have hair. I would have pulled it.
It grows back quick. But honestly, the experience of going there and getting to that 200th line and realizing, oh shit, the 200th one's better than the first.
Yeah, the thing that
was important for
the
my career.
manual labor component of the job that you might not have ever had that experience was probably really important for you going forward.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk about the move from Steph to Uber? You want to talk about the move from Uber to OYO? Like what precipitated these moves? And the reason I'm asking is that you had mentioned this earlier about geography. You've lived in all these cities, so you've seen the grass on the other side of the fence. But there's always, I don't want to say everything. I don't want generalizations. Pretty sure that like more than half of creatives in the world right now are saying like, yeah, but that place would be better. Or, yeah, but this would be a better opportunity. So, what was it that, I'm sure it wasn't misery at any of these places that pushed you out, but what was it that pushed you from either of these moves, Steph to Uber or Uber to OYO?
Steph to Uber and Uber to OYO are both very different, and neither of them were my choice. So, Steph, after, when one tends to sign a $301 million contract, one tends not to want to do anything else but play basketball.
That's a pretty safe income stream.
Who'd have thought?
Yeah.
And so honestly, like when he signed at that time, it was the largest NBA contract of all time. When he signed that, he was like, basically, hey, I want to focus on my family and I want to focus on my passion for basketball. And he didn't tell me that. I just figured that out when we stopped working together.
Right.
But
so is he a nice guy?
Super nice guy.
Yeah.
Unbelievably nice guy.
That's cool.
But, he loves basketball and he loves his family. And if he could make...
You're gone for a business decision completely.
100%.
Yeah.
And if you make, all the money you could ever want from doing the things that you love, fucking do it.
Yeah, I'm not going to go do
Don't let me stick a camera in your face.
Exactly.
That sucks.
Exactly. Yeah.
So after that happened, I was living in LA at the time. And I took a little bit of time to just kind of like work on projects. And it was a nice kind of little reset. And then I was approached to come to start freelancing at Uber. Something I didn't want to move from LA.
Driving cars.
So my mom for a long time actually literally thought that, like, she's like, oh, you left Steph and now, I mean, well, she thought that like I got fired from Steph and therefore I couldn't find a job anywhere else. So I was driving for Uber.
Exactly. So that's exactly what mom would think.
Well, I mean, yeah. I mean, literally when I started at Apple, my parents asked, did they give you health insurance?
Wow.
Yeah. So my parents have never known what I've done. And
me never.
Shout out parents everywhere who have creative kids.
I'm lucky that one of mine does. So.
Wow, you're rare. So I started freelancing for Uber, working with some awesome people there. Actually, my old creative director, Josh Rowe, who's fantastic. He brought me on as a freelancer there. Eventually, I converted to full-time. And it was really awesome. I just hired 3 of my old friends.
That's great.
From Uber over to OYO. And I couldn't be more stoked about it. But as some of you may have heard, Uber laid off a lot of people from the creative department. And it was kind of a wake-up call for a lot of people who had never been in that situation before, especially in Silicon Valley, where, mid-tier people who had maybe like 4 years experience were making, $120,000, $130,000 a year. It was a wake-up call that like, hey, this is not normal. And, the gravy train might be slowing down a little bit. And it was kind of a really great opportunity for me professionally to kind of hit the reset button and
it's great.
And really look at what it means to be an effective creative in a professional sense.
It's great.
And really understand that we're not here to go and make these 6-minute wank off, like beautiful director's cut things like all the time. We're here to do it like a good amount of time, but ultimately we're here to serve a larger business purpose. If you're someone else is signing your checks, you're not working for yourself,
right? Then
ultimately you're here for them.
It's great. I don't understand. I'm stupid this way. I don't understand what you make there. Like, so you mentioned something about the initiative of driver happiness and success
at Uber.
Yeah.
What
are you making?
Yeah. So at Uber, it was very traditional.
Where does it live?
So a lot of it was media buys, traditional media buys. So TV, print, out of home, things like that.
I never saw any of it.
Yeah. And so there was a lot of stuff that had a lot of money put behind it that was beautiful.
Because I have a friend, a former student from here, who's at Google, and a lot of the stuff they make is for internal and business to business. It's phenomenal creative. It's just not public facing.
Yeah. I mean, a lot of like there's a guy named Dave Colson, and I'm sure there's a lot of other people that were on that team who also helped out with it, but he's the one who showed this to me. Dave made this beautiful, he had this like beautiful box on his desk, and like I had no idea what it was, so obviously like what's in the box. And so he ended up telling me kind of about this whole initiative they were doing to basically reach out to our top performing drivers and thank them for what they've done.
Yeah.
And
cool.
there were these beautiful boxes that had like, they had a number of different things. And I can't remember off the top of my head, but it was like a gift card and like all this kind of stuff. And on top of that, they got like a bonus and like a lot of that stuff. They made 100 of these.
Right.
No one saw them except for those 100 people.
That's really cool, though, I think. Yeah.
And so you do make cool shit,
really
but
cool.
it's not necessarily something that like is going to be seen everywhere because
it's not going to help your mom understand what you do.
Dear God, no.
Okay, so then the move to OYO.
Yeah. So after they let everyone go from Uber and we were all doing a bunch of soul searching, I was at this place called the Austin Motel in Austin, Texas, with my girlfriend Victoria and our dog
Victoria.
Charlie. Hi, Victoria. And our dog Charlie, and he's a good boy. Right. We were just kind of like, we had a planned vacation. And we're like, I just lost my job, but whatever, let's just go on it. Mm-hmm. It was this beautiful. I don't know if you've ever been to Austin before, but there's this group called Bunkhouse Properties there, and they have a bunch of different properties there. But this one in particular is this famous motel called the Austin Motel that they took over, and I would say renovated it, but they like put paint in the right places. They have really cool people making like art in the to live and be sold in the common spaces. They've got a cool pool. They bring in DJs. It's a really cool way to kind of like really repurpose what was once there and not just pave it over and put in like something brand new.
Wow, keep Austin weird.
Exactly. And so very serendipitously, I was at this place and got a call from Brittany, the recruiter at OYO, and she was just, she found my name on a list of people who were fired from Uber.
Oh, I love these really smart recruiters.
Yeah, and
that's genius.
She was pitching me OYO, and the more we talked, the more I realized that I was already bought into OYO because I was already bought into the Austin Motel.
That's with an OYO property.
No, but it's a similar business model.
And you understand.
I understood.
You saw the value of what
exactly.
they do.
I saw the value.
Really interesting.
Of OYO. And OYO is a vast company. It's worth like $10 billion now. It's crazy. And basically the business model that they have that started in India and
that's why you said the Indian person's the one that knows it.
Exactly. Yeah. It started in India, took over India, went to China, took over China. Now we're in Europe and we're just breaking into the U.S. market. Cool. And anyway, like what the kind of base model, the way that we started was partnering with individual owners who own places like, a motel or like a place like the Austin Motel, partnering with them, bringing in our design team, coming in, making it a place that you want to stay that doesn't cost you an insane amount of money to stay in.
This is so cool, by the way, because you were talking about how a brand needs to integrate in how people live. And what you're basically saying now is that you work for a company that makes dull, run-of-the-mill expected content interesting, but it's a hotel.
Yeah.
Because the way you approach advertising by saying,
way to put it.
Yeah. So it's exactly the same thing applied to a completely different thing.
Yeah.
That's pretty badass.
Thank you.
And I think it's badass also that while you're talking about the fact that you said, fuck it, let's take our vacation anyway, on LinkedIn, I want to read this intro that you wrote about yourself on LinkedIn to the listeners. I'm a guy who tries to spend more time doing things than not. And by doing things, shit like that happens. Mm-hmm. Shit like that happens because you got out of the house and you took Charlie with you or left Charlie at home. Mm-hmm. So that's so cool. Thank you so much for talking. I really appreciate this.
I've had an amazing time, Dan. Thank you.
Really appreciate your patience with re-recording the intro. Listeners, check out Patrick on the internet. You can also reach him at electronic mail. On Instagram, his name on Instagram is Patrick Holly. Patrick Holly. I said it once. Patrick Holly.
Yes,
Patrick Holly.
It's my name twice.
There you go.
There we go.
Thank you for translating my idiocy. Patrick.Holly@oyorooms.com. You can always reach me at danspodcast@mac.com. I will throw up a link to Patrick's website of his personal work on the Facebook page at facebook.com/Dan DGMS Podcast. Yeah, send me an email. Let me know what you thought of this. Thank you, listeners, for sticking with this relatively longer conversation. I could not stop listening, so I hope you didn't as well. Patrick, I really appreciate your time. Thanks again so much.
Of course, Dan. Thank you.
Listeners, see you in 2 weeks. Bye.
That was fun.
Thank you.